who literally was shot in the Orangeburg Massacre, right? Who helped found SNCC, who marched with Marion Barry and Stokely Carmichael and Martin Luther King, and the list goes on and on.
Let me take you through an engaging breakdown of a recent clash that unfolded on Bill Maher's show, featuring CNN's Bakari Sellers and Ben Shapiro. It's a moment that perfectly encapsulates the ongoing tension between emotional narratives and cold, hard facts in today's race debates. Sellers, a frequent pundit known for leaning heavily on personal anecdotes and the race card, found himself outmatched when Shapiro brought logic and data to the table. What ensued was a masterclass in dismantling flimsy arguments, with Maher stepping in to deliver some much-needed common sense. Buckle up, this is going to be a ride. The stage was set when Sellers, in a prior clip, took a swipe at Shapiro's intellect, suggesting that the Daily Wire host and best-selling author somehow lacked the mental horsepower for an honest discussion. It's a bold claim, especially considering Shapiro's track record of dissecting arguments with surgical precision. Sellers framed Shapiro and others like him as fearmongers who profit off division, implying they lack the depth to engage meaningfully. It's a classic tactic. Discredit your opponent before the debate even begins. But when the two finally squared off on Maher's show, it became painfully clear who was struggling to keep up. Shapiro kicked things off by addressing the complexity of the race debate. There are many, many confounds when it comes to these particular issues, he said, and unless you remove the statistical confounds, you end up trying to blame vague, shadowy figures like implicit bias, which are innately insanely difficult, if not impossible, to measure. It's a straightforward point. The challenges tied to race in America can't be boiled down to a single buzzword like implicit bias. You need to peel back the layers: poverty, education, crime rates, family structure, and analyze them separately to get a clear picture. Otherwise, you're just chasing ghosts. Sellers' response? I don't know what he just said. It was a flippant dodge, but the audience didn't buy it. Shapiro wasn't speaking in riddles. He was laying out a logical framework that Sellers either couldn't or wouldn't engage with. Implicit bias, often touted as the root of all racial woes, is a slippery concept. It's tough to quantify, and studies on its impact are often inconclusive. Shapiro's argument was simple. If you're going to pin everything on something so nebulous, you'd better have more than feelings to back it up. Sellers didn't. Instead, he leaned on a personal story, as he often does. Here's where it got interesting. Sellers invoked his father's experience. All you have to do is ask my father, who literally was shot in the Orangeburg Massacre, who helped found SNCC, who marched with Maher and Barry and Stokely Carmichael and Martin Luther King. And the list goes on, and he will tell you today that he feels like this country is at 1954. It's a powerful anecdote. The Orangeburg Massacre of 1968, where 3 black students were killed by police during a protest, is a grim chapter in American history. Sellers' father was a civil rights warrior, and his pain is real. But Shapiro wasn't disputing that. He was challenging the leap from personal sentiment to broad reality. Sellers insisted that dismissing his father's feelings was ridiculous, but Shapiro didn't back down. Just because he feels that way doesn't make it true, he countered, pointing out that emotions, while valid, aren't the same as evidence. Bill Maher jumped in to reinforce the point. Feelings don't always reflect reality. It's a rare moment of clarity from Maher, who's often straddled the line between skepticism and liberalism. He wasn't denying the elder Sellers' lived experience. He was questioning whether it's fair to say America in 2025 mirrors the Jim Crow era based solely on one man's perception. Let's put this in context. In 1954, segregation was legal. Black Americans couldn't vote freely, faced lynchings, and were barred from schools, restaurants, and jobs based on race. Fast forward to 2025, black individuals serve as CEOs, senators, and Supreme Court justices. Laws protect against discrimination, and diversity programs abound. Is racism gone? No. Are there still disparities? Yes. But to claim we're back in 1954 is a stretch that defies the data. The FBI's hate crime statistics, for instance, show a decline in racial incidents over decades, even if underreporting remains a factor. Economic mobility, while imperfect, has improved since the 1960s with a growing black middle class. Sellers. Father might feel the past echoing, but feelings aren't facts. Sellers doubled down, accusing Shapiro of lacking the audacity to understand the Black experience. I think the ridiculous notion is for either one of you all to believe that you understand what the experience is to be, he began, only for Maher to cut in. I have to object to that, Maher said. I cannot talk about it because I'm not part of a group. I'm a sentient human being. It's a sharp rebuke to the idea that only certain people can discuss certain issues. Maher went further. There's two ways you cannot understand something. One is to be too far from it, the other is to be too close to something, and then sometimes you can't see it accurately either. It's a brilliant observation. Proximity can cloud judgment as much as distance can. Shapiro seized the moment. I'm not discounting your father's experience, he clarified. The idea that if I were to say to you as a Jew that the experience of Jews in the United States today is worse than the experience of Jews in Europe in 1939, I would not be stating accurately. It's not true. And it's also not true to say that the experience of Black people in America in 2024 is worse on a general level than the experience of Black men in 1954 in Alabama. That's just crazy. The analogy hit hard. The Holocaust saw millions of Jews murdered. 1954, Alabama saw Black Americans beaten and disenfranchised. Today's challenges, systemic biases, policing issues, pale in comparison. Sellers had no real comeback. He stammered, circling back to his father's trauma, but the argument was lost. This exchange exposes a broader trend. Sellers, like many pundits, think Joy Reid or Sunny Hostin, thrives on a victimhood narrative. Their careers hinge on convincing audiences that systemic racism is as bad as ever, that progress is an illusion. It's a lucrative gig. TV appearances, book deals, speaking fees. But when pressed with facts, the cracks show. Shapiro didn't deny racism's existence. He demanded specificity. Sellers offered none, relying instead on emotional appeals and identity politics. It's a strategy that collapses under scrutiny, as it did here. Maher, to his credit, didn't let it slide. He's been vocal about the left's obsession with feelings over reason, and this was a prime example. The woke crowd, Sellers included, often frames dissent as a personal attack. Question their narrative, and you're not just wrong, you're Carhartless. It's a silencing tactic, not a debate. But Maher and Shapiro flip the script, exposing the flaw. Caring about truth doesn't mean dismissing pain, it means seeking solutions beyond platitudes. The conversation veered into the term woke, which Sellers defended passionately. It's a word that came out of the African American community, he said, about acknowledging social justice inequities, acknowledging people's suffering. It is not a bad thing to care about others. And it angers me when people are like, this woke stuff's got to go. That's telling me you don't care about my lived experience. It's a heartfelt plea, but it misses the mark. Woke once meant awareness. Now it's a catch-all for policies and ideas, some sensible, some absurd, that brook no dissent. Maher admitted he'd mocked it himself. It became a byword for a lot of this goofy stuff. He's right. When woke justifies men competing in women's sports or canceling people for old tweets, it's less about justice and more about dogma. Sellers' frustration peaked here. He accused critics of apathy toward marginalized groups, LGBTQ, disabled, immigrants. But that's a straw man. Shapiro and Maher weren't denying inequality. They were rejecting the oversimplified lens Sellers pushed. Caring about others doesn't mean swallowing every narrative whole. It means asking tough questions. What works? What doesn't? Data shows, for instance, that Black educational attainment has risen since the 1960s, yet gaps persist. Why? That's a discussion worth having. One Sellers avoided. The real irony? Sellers' camp often cloaks their arguments in Christianity, as he did here. That is ungodly. That is not Christian. It's a cheap rhetorical trick, wielding faith as a cudgel while ignoring its call for truth. Other religions get a pass. Imagine Sellers critiquing Islam with the same zeal. He wouldn't. Christianity's an easy target, and they know it. By the end, Sellers was flailing. His father's story, while moving, couldn't prop up his claim that 2025 equals 1954. Shapiro and Maher dismantled the hyperbole with reason, leaving Sellers grasping at emotions. It's a microcosm of the race hustler playbook. Amplify grievance, dodge facts, and cry foul when challenged. But as America evolves, flawed yet forward-moving, that playbook's losing its grip. Progress isn't perfect, but it's real. And no amount of grandstanding can rewrite that.